Welcome to Freethought Matters. I'm Laurie Gaylor.
And I'm Dan Barker. We are co-presidents of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which produces Freethought Matters. Coming up, we'll be speaking with Steven Pinker, the renowned evolutionary psychologist and the Freedom from Religion Foundation's honorary president. We'll be talking about his new book, Rationality, what it is, why it seems scarce, why it matters.
The Freedom from Religion Foundation, which produces Freethought Matters, is the nation's largest association of free thinkers. That's atheists, agnostics, and other non-believers. We invite you to join us in our vital work to keep our secular government free from religious influence. Become a member at FFRF.org or ask for a complimentary copy of our newspaper, Freethought Today. Freedom depends on freethinkers. Watch prior episodes of Freethought Matters on FFRF's YouTube channel.
Come to Boston to celebrate your freedom from religion at the Freedom from Religion Foundation's 44th Annual Convention, November 19th and 20th, 2021. Hear and meet fellow freethinkers, including The Handmaid's Tale author Margaret Atwood, Ms. Magazine co-founder Gloria Steinem, Harvard professor Steven Pinker, and many others. For information on how to attend, visit our convention webpage at ffrf.us/Boston for all the details. We can't wait to see you in the cradle of liberty to celebrate our liberty from religion.
I'm Dan Barker.
I'm Laurie Gaylor.
Distinguished evolutionary psychologist and author Steven Pinker, who is the John Stone Family Professor in the Department of Psychology at Harvard University, is our guest today. Time magazine included him in its list of the 100 most influential people in the world today. Steve Pinker's 11 books include the bestsellers, The Blank Slate, How the Mind Works, The Language Instinct, and Enlightenment Now, The Case for Reason, Science, Humanism, and Progress.
The Freedom from Religion Foundation has previously awarded Steve Pinker our Emperor Has No Clothes Award for making known his dissent from religion. FFRF is honored to call Steven Pinker our honorary president, and today we're going to talk about his hot off the press book, Rationality, what it is, why it is so scarce, why it matters. And thank you for joining us again on Freethought Matters, Steve.
Wonderful to be back. Thanks, Laurie. Thanks, Dan.
Good to see you again. So congratulations on your, I guess this is your 11th book, is that right?
It depends how you count. I also have a greatest hits collection of academic essays. So if you throw that in, then it would be number 12.
Number 12, a dozen.
Kind of a rehash of old hits.
So a dozen books. So we want to talk about your new book, Rationality, which is fascinating. But it seems to me, and you can tell me if this is true, it seems to be related to your previous book, Enlightenment Now, which includes the case for reason. And you use metrics in Enlightenment Now to show that despite all the challenges that our planet is facing, data shows that life and health and prosperity and happiness and peace, they're on the rise worldwide. And so just briefly, why are you positing this?
The case for progress consists of data on measures of human well-being, how long we live, how many of us are in poverty, how many of us get killed in war and crime, how many people are enslaved, which countries deprive parts of their population of rights. And if you plot them over time, in almost every case, you get dramatic improvement. It's a feature of the world that most people aren't aware of, simply because the news is a non-random sample of everything that's wrong with the world on a given day. But the things that go right, which often consist of nothing happening, like a country that's not at war, don't make headlines. And things that change gradually, a few percentage points a year, also don't make headlines. but they can add up to transform the world, and often people are unaware of it. And so people often compliment me on that book and its predecessor, The Better Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined. They say, oh, it's so nice that you're an optimist. But the point really isn't optimism. The point is just being aware of facts of history that most people are unaware of because they get their picture of the world from the news.
It's like you never see a headline that says, a child crossed the street today and was not run over by a car. You never see those things.
Exactly. Or a city that hasn't been attacked by terrorists, or a country that's not at war, or things that do happen, but happen by percentage points. And I love to quote Max Roser, who said that the papers could have had the headline, 137,000 people escaped from extreme poverty yesterday, every day for the last 25 years. But they never ran that headline, and as a result, 1 billion people escaped from extreme poverty, and no one knows about it.
So it's the subtitle, though, of Enlightenment Now that is what you're positing is the reason for progress, for that it's science reason, the Enlightenment.
Well, exactly. And by the way, I have to add that I debuted Enlightenment Now before it was published. The first public talk I ever gave on it was at the annual meeting of the Freedom from Religion Foundation in Madison a few years ago.
That's right. And you were dusting off your notes as you came down the stairs. I remember that.
It was hot off the laptop. It's the first time I talked about those ideas in public. Well, you asked the right question, namely, what causes progress? And people often say, okay, you've shown that there's progress. That means you must believe in progress. And I answer, as the humorist Fran Lebowitz did, I don't believe in anything you have to believe in. I don't think the universe has any force that kind of lifts us up, makes us better. Quite the contrary. The universe kind of tries to grind us down. The only reason that things can improve in the face of pathogens and entropy and human nature and things going wrong is that we deploy rationality. Every once in a while, people will try to apply their brain power to making other people better off. Now and again, they succeed. If we keep the innovations that make people off and learn from our mistakes and don't do those again, then bit by bit, progress can happen. And that's all the progress consists of.
So you're a cheerleader for humanism, reason, science, and which is what we need. But I wonder how much perhaps the conspiracy theories during the pandemic or the alternative facts, fake news in the Trump administration might have inspired you to write Rationality.
Well, it was I don't want to say it's a happy coincidence because it may be good for my book, but it's certainly not good for the country that so many people believe so many crazy things. But I taught a new course in the general education curriculum at Harvard called Rationality, and I posted the lectures online, and they were extremely popular. But the timing was fortunate in that even though the bulk of the course was on tools of reasoning like probability and logic and critical thinking, correlation and causation, Bayesian reasoning, it comes at a time when reason and rationality are on everyone's minds, because the frequently asked question is, if we're such a rational species, why does it seem like humanity is losing its mind?
Yeah, you hear that a lot. If we're Homo sapiens, right? We are so smart, but then why are we so stupid? Well,
that's the paradox, that the tension that inspired me to write this book, trying to resolve that.
So I noticed in your book that it's kind of two-sided. On the one hand, you talk about all of the downside, the fallacies, the problems, and they're fascinating to look at. But then you go on to suggest what we can do to overcome. What are some of the fallacies? You mentioned a lot of them in this book, confirmation bias, and what are some of your favorite fallacies?
Well, probably the most pervasive and most powerful is the my side bias. Namely, you endorse beliefs that are sacred values or bloody shirts or conventional wisdom in your own sect or coalition or religion or political party, and that, sure enough, gains you prestige within your clique. You're a warrior. You're a fighter for the cause, and you demonize the other side as stupid and evil. It's a powerful bias. It's one of the biases that shows no correlation with intelligence, and it can be demonstrated in the lab by giving people logic problems or data problems. And what people will do is they will, instead of following the logic. Does the math work? Do the logical steps follow from one another? They will endorse whatever conclusion is a left-wing talking point or a right-wing talking point, respectively. So that's certainly one of the most pervasive, and it's one of the most relevant today in an era of increased polarization. But there are also the various informal fallacies, arguing ad hominem, guilt by association. Oh, so-and-so attended a conference that where someone else spoke at that conference and they believe in racial differences, or the conference was funded by a foundation that was originated by someone who supported eugenics. Well, maybe, and those are bad things, perhaps, but it does not bear on the truth or falsity of what the person is advocating. That has to stand or fall on its merits.
So just to go back to ad hominem, do you want to explain what that means?
Oh yes, ad hominem means to the person, and it's trying to cast aspersions on the character of the person, or even the qualifications of the person. Again, rather than on the content of the argument. I'll throw out one more, and this is the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, referring to the marksman who shoots a bullet into the side of a barn and then paints a target around it. That also known as post hoc reasoning or 20/20 hindsight. Namely, anyone can seem like a genius. Anyone, in fact, can seem like a seer, a visionary, if they get to kind of doctor their predictions after they know what actually happened. Or if they make so many predictions that they can then crow about the 1 out of the 50 that came out true, hope people will forget the 49 that came out false.
Throw enough spaghetti against the wall.
That's what happens.
Another word for it, exactly.
When I was a preacher, that's what happened with prayer. We would pray to God, and every once in a while, what you prayed for actually happened. See, that proves it. But we conveniently ignored the 99 times when we got sicker or when it didn't work as well. Yeah.
It's a fallacy that was pointed out by Francis Bacon in the 16th century, and someone showed him a painting in a church commemorating sailors on a ship who survived a storm because of their prayers to God. And he said, well, yes, but where are all the paintings of these sailors who prayed to God and whose ship sank?
Yeah, just
so, we've known about this for centuries, but as you note, it persists.
That would be a painting of the ocean, basically.
Right.
So your book is called Rationality. What is rationality?
I define it as the use of knowledge to attain a goal. And it's a critical part of the definition because it means there isn't just one tool of rationality. It depends on what your goal is, whether your goal is to deduce new propositions from old ones, and in that case, it's logic, to estimate the likelihood of an event, in which case it's probability, to make a risky choice when you don't know how it'll turn out, but you want to maximize your likely benefit, and so on. But it also means, and the reason that it's such a crucial definition is that sometimes reasoning can be rational in pursuit of a dubious goal, like magnifying the glory and honor of your cause. It is, you can rationally pursue that, although one can then question whether that goal is worth pursuing.
So rationality is not just some abstract logic. It's a flesh and blood living thing that we're all engaged in, is what you say.
It is. Well, logic is one of the forms of rationality for the goal of cranking out new propositions that are logically entailed by existing propositions. So if you have something that you believe is true and you want to say, well, what else is true? Based on that, the form of that particular sentence, logic is your tool. But you may not want to do that. And there are cases in which logic is not particularly rational, Mr. Spock notwithstanding. For example, if I give you the syllogism, all things made from plants are healthy, tobacco is made from plants, is it logically valid to deduce, therefore, tobacco is healthy? Well, it actually is, because it's contained in the premises. If you believe the premises, you've got to believe the conclusions. But we have reasons to doubt one of the premises.
Yeah, you got to look at the premise. Well, so one of the major themes of your book is that thinking is not enough. We need a community of thinkers to spot fallacies. We're going to talk more about how to think more rationally and all the solutions that can bring us on the second half of Freethought Matters with Steven Pinker.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist.
When I first recorded that commercial back in 2014, being openly atheist in America was still fairly uncommon. Today, the fastest growing religious group in the country is the non-religious, especially among the young. That progress is heartening, but the religious pushback is fierce and the forces of Christian nationalism are well organized. Our progress won't continue unless we work together so that reason and our secular constitution will prevail. That's why I'm asking you to join the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics working to keep state and church separate, just like our founders intended. Please join the Freedom from Religion Foundation today. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
I'm Doug Hinahara, and I'm an out-of-the-closet atheist. I consider myself fortunate in that I wasn't raised in an overly religious family, so I was allowed to think for myself. And around the time I was 17, as I was exploring these ideas of religion, I was told by a fundamentalist Christian that my grandmother, who had emigrated from Japan, was destined to eternal damnation because she was a Buddhist. And I couldn't accept that, and it kind of unraveled from there for me. So at this point in my life, I've become very comfortable with the idea that I don't need religion or belief in God to be a moral person and live an ethical life. I'm proud of the fact that I have 2 daughters who have grown up to be wonderful young women, and I'm proud to say also atheist.
And we're back with our conversation with Steven Pinker, whose new book is Rationality, Why It Seems Scarce, What It Is, and Why It Matters. Now, you've told us what it is. Why does it matter? Can't we just live our lives without thinking? Can't we just live?
Yeah, and there are trends in our culture that portray rationality as dour and joyless and nerdy, and that to enjoy life you have to be you have to go crazy. You have to stop making sense. But rationality matters because it really does lead to a better life on average. That people who are more resistant to the classic fallacies are also less likely to get sick, less likely to get into accidents, less likely to get fired. Generally, life turns out better, as you'd expect. Also, it's what drives the progress that we talked about at the beginning of the program, because things don't get better by themselves. Crops don't grow taller. People don't stop fighting. The germs don't stop infecting people. The only way we can push back against these this Sisyphus gravity is by our ingenuity, figuring out how to outsmart nature. And finally, I suggest, I can't prove it, but a lot of moral progress, I think, originated with an argument. At least historically, there were precocious arguments early on, even for things that we might think don't need an argument. They're so obvious to us. Like, might there be a wee thing wrong or two wrong with burning heretics at the stake? Now, this almost seems like a comical question, but back in the 16th century, during the wars of religion, when hundreds of thousands of people were being burned for the wrong theological beliefs, the argument had to be made. It was made by Sebastian Castellio, and it's actually quite compelling today. He said, look, how do we define the heretic? It's just someone with whom we disagree. Well, if Calvin says that people disagree with him are heretics, and other sects say that people who disagree with them are heretics, and we burn heretics, that means we've got to burn everyone. Surely that can't be right.
We just went to make a pilgrimage of the statue of Michael Servetus in Geneva, who was burned to death because of Calvin.
Because of Calvin's...
Exactly, yes. The argument did not catch on quickly enough. And so are the arguments against slavery and cruel capital and corporal punishments, and the criminalization of homosexuality and war and absolute monarchy. In each case, before the movement took off, there was an argument why that practice was inconsistent with other values that people claimed to hold. And the arguments they'd have an effect. They would be published in pamphlets, they'd be translated into other languages, they'd be secretly circulated, they'd be debated in pubs and coffee houses and salons. And eventually they would, as we say today, kind of go viral and become the law of the land.
Well, like Voltaire or Thomas Paine, the
exactly
pamphleteers.
And before that, Spinoza, secretly and avidly circulated under the counter.
So could I just ask you your opinion about, it seems to me that we don't have rationality in the United States and many parts of the world in terms of the pandemic, where we see the resistance to masking, and now we see the resistance to vaccine mandates. Isn't this a symptom of what's wrong here?
Oh, absolutely. It couldn't be a more poignant one. But resistance to vaccines is as old as vaccines. And I think we're all vulnerable to primitive intuitions, like essentialism. Health comes when the pure essence, the pure stuff of the body is unadulterated, and you introduce a pollutant, an adulterant, a germ, and that's what makes us sick. The way to treat it is you purge, you bloodlet, you have enemas, you kind of try to squeeze the bad stuff out. And by that kind of primitive intuition, injecting a disease agent into your body, into your blood, is like the last thing you ever want to do. Now, most of us unlearn these primitive intuitions when we trust the scientific and medical establishment. And as trust in the establishment has gone down, these primitive intuitions could reassert themselves. So it really is Sisyphus. I think we are always pushing back against elements of irrationality that are kind of baked into us, that probably served us well before we had modern science and math and journalism and record keeping, but that are always there as part of human nature.
And some people used religious arguments in favor of bad ideas. For example, there were religious people arguing in favor of slavery using the Bible. And there are a lot of religious people with the pandemic who are saying, well, my God will take care of me. Isn't that a kind of a bias as well?
It is indeed. And the topic of rationality did make me think anew about religion. And for millions of people, their religious beliefs are kind of exist in a funny kind of space. They profess them, they say they believe them, but you wonder how deep the belief is. But of course, in some people, it actually crosses over into literal belief about reality, in the same way that I might believe that there's food in the fridge or there isn't food in the fridge. For most people, I differentiate between two kinds of beliefs: reality beliefs and mythology beliefs. And the real problem is when a sacred value kind of leaks from the mythology zone into the reality zone. I mean, the example that I give is talk about irrationality, the conspiracy theories like QAnon, the cabal of Satan-worshipping cannibalistic pedophiles in the deep state. Well, someone who believed or at least claimed to believe in the Pizzagate predecessor of QAnon, the way they took action for this pizzeria in DC that supposedly was the hub of that pedophile ring, he left a one-star review on Google. He said the pizza was underbaked and there were some men looking suspiciously at my son. Now you wonder how seriously he took that belief. Like, why didn't he call the police if he really thought that children were being raped in the basement? And I think that's the way a large percentage of people treat conspiracy theories. They treat them like they treat religious belief, like, who's to say whether it's really true or false? It's a good thing to believe. It emboldens our side. It's even if the Democrats didn't do it, it's the kind of thing they could do, and so I believe it because it just exposes how awful they are. It's when, but sometimes it does cross over into reality, like the guy who burst into the pizzeria with his guns blazing to free the children. And the history of religious wars and crusades and inquisitions. They did take their beliefs quite literally.
Well, and even January 6th, Trump won the election, and all of the QAnon and Christian nationalists and so on who joined in on that, they have many, many fallacies and many, many irrationalities.
Indeed, it's another great example. I suspect that for the majority of Republicans who endorse the Stop the Steal conspiracy theory, they kind of believe it because that's what Republicans believe. But there is some subset of them that literally believe it, like the guys with the Viking horns and the bare chest who tried to stop the count on January 6th.
They seem like a very good argument for reading your book.
So, Steve, you mentioned probability earlier, and we only have a minute left here, so I don't know if we can do justice to this, but you bring up Bayes' theorem, and I know Bayes' theorem is a big mathematical probabilistic equation, but can you explain Bayes' theorem and how it helps our feeble brains understand probability in just simple English?
Sure, it's actually very, very simple. It's a way of calibrating your degree of belief in an idea according to the strength of the evidence. And it's just three terms. Your degree of credence or belief should depend on your prior, that is, how credible, how plausible was the idea before you even look at any evidence. The likelihood, if it is true, what are the chances that you would see what you're seeing? You multiply those together. You divide by how common are those data across the board. So in the case of a medical test, the prior would be how common is the disease in the population. The likelihood would be if the sensitivity of a test. If you do have the test, what's your chance of getting a true positive? The denominator would be the sum of the true positives and the false positives.
I could carry that handy little formula with me through life, that would be a very... And isn't the idea that your probability should be adjusted according to new evidence that comes in? It should go up or down depending on what else you learn.
Indeed, and a common restatement of Bayes' theorem was by Carl Sagan, another free thought hero, who said extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Yes.
I don't know if the foundation ever had Carl Sagan to speak, but he would fit right in, of course.
We had his widow to speak after he died. We never got to get
and Julian.
Yes, and Julian. And she'll be speaking along with you at the 44th Annual Convention of the Freedom from Religion Foundation in Boston. So we're greatly looking forward to seeing you there.
Can't wait.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. It's been a pleasure to have you. Steve Pinker, author of Rationality, What It Is, Why It Seems Scarce, and Why It Matters. So thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching Freethought Matters.
Because free thought matters.
Hi, I'm Steve Pinker. In my book, Enlightenment Now, I show that the world has become a better place as reason has been overcoming superstition and tribalism. But the values of the Enlightenment are under attack. That's why I'm a proud member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest association of free thinkers working to keep state and church separate. Please join me in supporting the Freedom from Religion Foundation to ensure that our government is driven not by religion, but by reason.